Our first speaker will be Kevin Burke, who serves the Tucson community by promoting sustainable growth and economic development. He's Deputy Director for the City of Tucson Office of Economic Initiatives, and his work is focused on collaboration with regional partners and the local business community. Born and raised in Tucson, Kevin graduated from the University of Puget Sound in Tacoma, Washington, came back and earned a master's degree in city and regional planning from the University of Arizona. And Kevin's professional experience includes positions in state and local government management in Texas and Arizona. Then our next speaker will be Mike Peel. He's the statewide sustainability director for Local First Arizona Foundation. He's got over 15 years of experience in sustainability program development, local business and nonprofit support services, with a focus on sustainability planning and project implementation, and with grant writing and research. Mike's also a native of Tucson. He's lived and worked in Greater Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and Dublin. Throughout his career, Mike's been awarded multiple distinctions and honors. He received his BA in Government and Leadership from Claremont McKenna College, his Master in Education and Educational Leadership from the NAU, and he's currently a doctoral candidate at ASU focused on equity and sustainability. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, who will get us started with the local current picture. And Kevin, if you want to share your screen.
Okay, I'll do just that. Well, good evening, everyone. Paula, appreciate the introduction. And again, my name is Kevin Burke. I'm the Deputy Director for the City of Tucson's Office of Economic Initiatives. In short, we're the economic development team for the City of Tucson. We're actually a part of the City Manager's Office. And I've been with the city for just about 2.5 years now. It's been so far the highlight of my professional career to come home and work for the City of Tucson, having grown up here on the far east side. And I'm one of those who has left a couple of times, and I keep finding my way back. So pleased to be here with you all this evening. I've got just a few slides, so we'll rip through pretty quick, give Mike a shot, and then I'm sure you'll have some great questions for us. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and dive right in. Okay, is that working for everyone?
Yes.
Yeah, that looks good.
Very good. So my presentation today, what I'd like to do is give you a little bit of background on our office, the Office of Economic Initiatives, and then as promised, a little bit of data. And I'll issue my caveat up front. The City of Tucson is not, one of these tech companies with big data where we have teams siphoning data from all over the city and compiling it into fancy charts and reports. We borrow from the work of others, and we're lucky enough in our region to have some really stellar partners, particularly the Eller College of Business at the University of Arizona. And of course, federal government compiles a lot of data that you'll see that I'll present here today as well. That said, what does the city's Economic Development Department do? So a couple of things. Business attraction. This is sort of classic economic development, right? We go out and we talk to site selectors and we talk directly to companies and we woo them and we tell them about how great Tucson is, and we hope they will come to Tucson, invest their capital and hire our people. The other side of traditional economic development to that is what we refer to as BR&E, business retention and expansion. And this is the most important, but often perhaps most overlooked part of economic development. So obviously we have major employers here, we have minor employers here, and we want to keep them all. And so we have an entire set of programs in our office that's focused on building relationships with our existing employers, strengthening those relationships, and making sure that they have the resources that they need to continue to be successful here in Tucson, with the ultimate goal for us, what we would consider a win, is if one of those businesses builds another facility or a new location or hires more people, right? So let me give you one quick example of a business attraction effort. Caterpillar, which has a very shiny new building in the Mercado district in downtown Tucson, built that facility a couple of years ago with assistance from the city of Tucson, our partners at Pima County, and the Rio Nuevo district, right? That would be a big business attraction win for us, 800 high-paying jobs new to the city of Tucson. Business retention and expansion, Raytheon's a pretty obvious example, but it's maybe too obvious. So let me give you a different one, Texas Instruments. Texas Instruments started as Burr Brown before they were acquired, a longtime Tucson company. They approached us 4 years ago and said, hey, we've got 3 different facilities around the city of Tucson. We need a new regional headquarters and we want to consolidate our operations. So if you've been by the Williams Center anytime in the last year and a half, you saw construction in what was for a very long time, for people who've been in Tucson, the donut hole at the very center of Williams. And now it is Texas Instruments, 160,000 square foot regional headquarters where they've consolidated their operations. They've also hired more people. So they made a major capital investment, about $85 million in that facility, and they're in the process of hiring 120 new people over the course of 5 years. A newer focus for us, entrepreneurship and small business. And I'm going to come back to this, get into it a little bit more, but suffice to say, this is the leading edge for us, non-traditional economic development practice. Some things that are specific to our office and specific really to how things work within the City of Tucson's organization. Our office, being a part of the city manager's office, is highly involved with redevelopment projects and annexation. And so those are 2 key pillars for what we do that you won't normally see, in a municipal economic development department. But I could give you another example of that. Downtown development projects where the city was the landlord. And so you think perhaps like the Ronstadt Center, the transit center downtown is all on city-owned property. Last year, the city awarded a contract for development, or I should say redevelopment, of that center to a private development entity. The Office of Economic Initiatives has been a key player in both crafting the request for proposals and then putting it out on the street and searching for qualified developers to come in and do that. And we'll be a part of that project for the duration. I'll keep it moving here. So while those are the pillars of our efforts for the Office of Economic Initiatives, what we kind of see as a through line for all of that is what we will just refer to as quality of place. If you're going to attract new companies and if you're going to keep your existing companies here, then you need to have a reason for people to want to live in Tucson. And I know that you all know this, right? And everyone's got their own reasons. What we like to put up on this slide are a couple of the latest accolades that we've received. And this is really important for our office and some of the marketing that we do, both nationally and internationally. Huge win, I think, for the entire region was the 2018 designation of Tucson as the first UNESCO City of Gastronomy. Visit Tucson leans into that really hard, and they're a great economic development partner for us. We do as well. And then I'll point out the most recent one. There's tons of lists and companies that make money off of doing lists, and in general, we like that, right? Because there's more opportunities for us to shine and to show our niche. There was one that a well-known consulting group put out just a few months ago, which ranked Tucson as America's 17th best city. We love rankings like that. And anytime, what I'll say is we're punching above our weight, right? So if Tucson's the 33rd largest city in the country and they rank us as the 17th best, we'll absolutely take that as a win. Back to the idea of traditional economic development, a lot of what we try to do is focus our efforts. So we're not casting a net to just say any employer, any line of business, right? We have strengths here in Tucson. And so what we attempt to do is build on those strengths. This is essentially a list of our strongest industries. And so when we're out trying to recruit businesses and work with our major employers, these are the areas that we're working in. This list probably won't come as much of a surprise to anyone here, except for perhaps what I'll say the last 2 on the list, optics and photonics and mining technology. Those are more of emerging clusters for us. But what we've learned more recently is that with the number of new optics and photonics companies that have been created and have located to Tucson, we actually have the 2nd largest optics cluster in the entire United States after Rochester, New York. So that's a strength that we want to continue to build on. We don't do this by ourselves, obviously. I mentioned a few of our partners before. We work on a daily basis with Pima County, with the University of Arizona, and with the rest of the folks that you see here, including Mike and his team at Local First Arizona. So as my boss, Barbara Coffey, says, economic development is a team sport. None of us are working in a silo. None of us are working alone. It takes all of these folks and more to make our business attraction and retention efforts really successful in the long term. I want to highlight something that the City of Tucson and our office has done fairly recently. For those that aren't aware, we've tried to create a new brand for ourselves, which is a part of, but slightly separate from the City of Tucson. So Connect Tucson is our brand. We have a separate website stood up for that purpose. If you haven't, please do check out connecttucson.com. It is a wealth of resources for folks who are looking or interested in moving to Tucson, whether they're individuals or businesses, business owners. It also has a ton of resources for our existing businesses, especially small and local businesses and entrepreneurs. We link really prominently to some things like, to some groups like Startup Tucson, who's produced a really fabulous startup ecosystem guide. And we have our small business checklist, which is actually a really cool, and if you haven't tried it out, I'd brag on it a little bit because it's kind of fun. You go in, and if you have like a business in mind that you want to start, you can go in and it's question-based, and you'll go through and basically take a survey, and it will give you some results of places that you might want to try to take your next steps in forming your business. So we've seen that be really successful, but we want to continue to promote these resources to the community. So I'm going to shift gears right here. You might have already got the sneak peek. So what I want to do is just talk through a couple of charts that show some, I think, important data points for where we are and where we've been over the past, say, 18 months. And then I'm going to try to circle back and summarize, and then I'm going to toss it to Mike, okay? So the first one is real simple. This is employment specifically in the Tucson MSA over the last 10 years. And what you can see from the massive dip, this was the beginning of the pandemic, March, April, May of 2020, took a huge hit and fairly quickly ramped back up, right? And so we're essentially back to a point where there has not been full employment recovery, but what we're talking about is on the magnitude of 20 to 30,000 jobs that have not returned to our local economy over the past year and a half. The flip side of that is Tucson's unemployment rate. And so you see the inverted spike there, where for a very brief period in time, we were closing in on 15% unemployment. Truly shocking, right? By historical comparisons, numbers that we have not seen in our lifetimes, and for it to have happened so quickly was truly a shock to the system. Even perhaps more shocking than that was how quickly a lot of this recovered. So Tucson's unemployment rate, as you can see over the past 10 years, had historically, I would say we've been making steady progress coming down from the Great Recession all the way down to essentially what we've considered full unemployment at about 4% for the last few years before the pandemic hit. So we've not come back down to that point. This difference between the approximately 7.5% unemployment we're experiencing today and the 4.5–5% unemployment we were experiencing in 2019 and 2020 mirrors what you're seeing here, this gap between our current total employment and that total employment figure that we had reached in 2019. The change in small business has also been really dramatic. And this is, I think, a key point for this group and for our organization as we look to continue the recovery and strengthen the business community over the next few years. The biggest groups that were hit were those small businesses. And so the best statistics that I've seen that we believe we have available, Pima County as a whole has had approximately a 30% decrease in the total number of small businesses in operation since January of 2020. So this graph I know can be a little hard to read. Some of the numbers got cut off on the side here, but the dark purple line is where we're at, starting from 0% to negative 30% where we are currently. And of course, you'll see we've actually fared much better than many Arizona counties, but we're right in line with what Maricopa County has seen as well, the two more developed counties in the state. This actually kind of ties in a little more closely to those first two slides, and it really speaks to one of the defining characteristics of the pandemic and the economic situation that the pandemic has created. We have very high employment and very low unemployment for high wage individuals and much higher unemployment for low wage individuals, right? And you've heard this referred to in a bunch of different ways, most prominently probably the K-shaped recovery, right? So what we believe, to be the most accurate representation of how the economy has functioned over the last 18 months is that the vast majority of people in the United States, particularly middle and higher income folks, white collar workers, kept their jobs and have actually been doing quite well over the course of the pandemic. There is a major subset of our population, which is typically low wage workers, whose jobs either have not come back, right, or they are no longer seeking those jobs for a whole host of reasons, which hopefully we won't get into too much today. This speaks to the same idea of the K-shaped recovery. So what we're looking at here is the total change in consumer spending between January of 2020 and the end of July 2021. And what this actually shows is that consumer spending in Tucson, in the Tucson MSA, has increased almost 14%, which, had this been a normal year, we would be ecstatic, right? Incredible growth in spending. And what this sort of masks is what's going on below the surface and what you saw on this previous chart, right? So what's really happening here is essentially the result of trillions of dollars in federal stimulus provided directly to companies and directly to individuals, right? All of us. People are spending, and the key change is that they've been spending in a different way. And I think this probably resonates with all of us, at least it does for me. We've shifted our spending. So we're not doing as much spending in person at restaurants, in services where we were interacting face-to-face with those businesses and with those employees. That spending has increased and it's shifted online. So this is an optimistic note that I want to leave us with here today. This is our best information coming again from Eller College of Business, what George Hammond refers to as high propensity business applications. And so they track applications for employee identification numbers, tax identification numbers with the state of Arizona. This is for the entire state. And so we unfortunately don't have this data disaggregated for just the city of Tucson or for Pima County even. But on the statewide basis, what you see is that actually for years, right, really low new business formation. And then after the recession and this dip, which represents like March and April of 2020, a pretty significant spike and ramp up over the past year. And so these are not, LLCs that are, special purpose vehicles for owning a piece of property. High propensity business applications means they're the type of business applications where there's high confidence or an expectation that there's going to be capital investment and the hiring of employees in those businesses. So new businesses is what we need to fill that gap to make up for the 30% of small businesses that have closed over the past 18 months. And what we're looking for is for this trend of high propensity business applications to continue to go up over the next few months. So this slide has a lot of words. I don't know how legible it is to all of you on your screens at home. I'm going to go through it. It essentially summarizes in words the last couple of slides. I think this is the most succinct summary that I could put together of what's happened during the course of the past 18 months. When the pandemic started, high-income households sharply reduced spending. We stopped going out. We stopped eating at restaurants. We stopped going to stores, right? Because of that reduced spending, particularly by high-income consumers, where the bulk of the spending occurs, many service businesses lost more than half of their revenue in a very short period of time. Businesses lost revenue, they laid off employees, and it was, of course, particularly those low-income workers in the service sector businesses. Between 30 and 50% of low-wage workers lost their jobs in the Tucson area. Stimulus payments from the federal government, direct payments to individuals, and the Paycheck Protection Program provided that rebound in spending that we saw in the total consumer expenditures. That did not affect businesses proportionally. So the result being that they've had a limited impact even though all of that spending boosted, all of that federal support boosted spending overall, that spending still has not been occurring at those smaller businesses, right? The businesses that laid off all of the people. So our conclusion, the conclusion of many, I believe, is that in the long term, the best way for us to drive a full economic recovery, the best way to create jobs in the service sector, to bring those jobs back, is going to be to invest in public health efforts. We have to actually end the pandemic if we're going to continue, or if we're going to finish the job of digging out of the hole that was created over the past 18 months. This is my contact information, pretty easy to find, Kevin Burke at TucsonAZ.gov. You can also find us at connecttucson.com. I would encourage all of you to visit that website and to share it with your friends. And that is all I have today. Thank you very much.
I guess I missed.
Thanks, Kevin. That last slide in particular is a really great summing up. A little depressing, a little maybe encouraging, and the message is, of course, wear your mask and stay healthy. And if you haven't, get your vaccination.
That's absolutely right.
It's interesting to see just some of these ups and downs, how much bouncing went on in that last 18 months. So thanks very much for giving us that perspective. And
You're welcome.
We'll turn it over now to Mike Peel.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for the beginning portion of this presentation series, and we'll follow up with some information. It's very sobering, depressing, but I'll get into positive too. But on the heels of yesterday's news from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and the UN report on climate change, we are facing sobering statistics on how bad climate change is getting, how much worse than we even realized, actually. And however, the city of Tucson has declared a climate emergency declaration. And I think that is what we have to be doing more of, is mobilizing locally across our communities, across the US, across the globe. And with the city of Tucson climate emergency declaration, that's a decade-long plan to become carbon neutral by 2030. And we need a whole lot more of that based on the UN statistics that we're seeing. So I just wanted to start there for the larger context, and then I'll get into now my presentation. I know I'm preaching to the choir there. Can everyone see my slides?
We can see them. Could you expand it to full screen? Is that full screen?
I see full screen. Do others see full screen?
I see full
I do. It looks good, Mike.
All right, I'll keep going then. So as statewide sustainability director at Local First Arizona, we look at environmental sustainability going hand in hand with economic sustainability, which is why following Kevin makes a whole lot of sense to talk about what we're doing to strengthen the local economy to make it more diverse, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. And so our major goals of our team to help our members, our local business members and nonprofit members be more sustainable include reducing operating costs by saving on utilities, reducing energy, water, waste, and carbon emissions, educating businesses, employees, and patrons, preparing for a future with a changing climate, and attracting and retaining clients, customers, and employees as a result. We have a number of programs. I like to see it as a series of programs that a business or nonprofit could go through. That's what we encourage, is a pathway approach to finding solutions to lessen impact and empower them to play a role in making us more sustainable. So we have our Arizona Green Business Program. It's a custom toolkit full of best practices and ideas that can help the bottom line positively, focusing on energy consumption, water conservation, waste diversion, pollution prevention, transportation, and water and wastewater practices. And it's no easy checklist to accomplish, I can tell you. It's been planned out for a long time now to be a rigorous standard to be certified by Local First. And what I like to think of as the next level up it doesn't necessarily have to go in this order though, but for a larger project to be planned, we have Scale Up, which is our Arizona focused program. And it's all about project planning through a cohort to have a data-driven project for cost savings and community impact. So participants go from education and collaboration to project planning, financing if needed, and implementation all in one accessible package. And yeah, the project is one that could be started with if a business or nonprofit already has something in mind that they want to do a deep dive into in an area of sustainability. A lot go through certification first, though, to learn as much as they can about what they might want to do more of later. So ultimately, we're looking at business education to sustainable project planning and sustainable economy development as our trajectory. And Scale Up is where we get a lot of traction with bigger efforts being planned out. So it's a 7-week workshop series, and we get into deep dive strategies on energy, water, waste, transportation, green teams, and social impact for sustainability. Each Scale Up project must lead to a projected 20% reduction in energy use, water consumption, waste generation, and/or transportation emissions, and have a social component as well, ensuring equity and resiliency, communication as well incorporated into the plan, meaning how to communicate with the community around you about what you're doing and have a better process to have a better equitable impact with your results. And what I mean by that, I love this quote for thinking about a green economy, a sustainable economy, and community. So Elizabeth Yampierre has been an important voice on these issues for more than 2 decades. As co-chair of the Climate Justice Alliance, she leads a coalition of more than 70 organizations focused on addressing racial and economic inequities together with climate change. And this quote is great. A just transition looks at the process of how we get there. And so it looks at not just the outcomes, which is something that the environmentalists look at, but it looks at the process, workers' rights, land use, how people are treated, whether the process of creating materials that take us to a carbon neutral environment is toxic, and whether it affects the host community where it's being built. It looks at all those different kinds of things. And so we encourage that with our project planning process and the efforts that we undertake and support through our network. So I want to talk now about some trends in green job and economic development. There's a lot going on, and I want to really emphasize how much every one of you can be involved in shaping what happens next with everything going on in Congress right now and the high stakes negotiations going on for infrastructure, for example, and everything with this current administration. There's never been a better time to pick up the phone to write every time you can, actually. They need to hear from you. I'll give a few examples. Under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, Arizona would expect to receive $76 million over 5 years to support the expansion of an electric vehicle charging network in the state. Arizona will also have the opportunity to apply for the $2.5 billion in grant funding dedicated to EV charging in the bill. Next, Arizona had over 28,000 registered electric vehicles as of June, according to the Department of Energy's Alternative Fuels Data Center, the 7th highest number among states. So we have a lot going on in this area. When ownership is measured per 1,000 residents, Arizona inches up a notch to 6th place with just over 4 electric vehicles per 1,000 people. So next, under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, Arizona will receive a minimum allocation of $100 million to help provide broadband coverage across the state, including providing access to the at least 353,000 Arizonans who currently lack it, which is another critical piece of the puzzle here of what we need. And under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, over 1 million or 24% of people in Arizona will be eligible for the affordability connectivity benefit, which will help low-income families afford internet access. Based on formula funding alone, Arizona would expect to receive $883 million over 5 years under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act to improve public transportation options across the state. And that's really important for business purposes. If we're talking business and economic development, we need those strategies as top priorities. And we also need alternative transportation strategies high up there. It's not just about electric vehicles. And based on formula funding alone, Arizona would expect to receive $5 billion for federal aid highway apportioned programs and $225 million for bridge replacement and repairs under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act over 5 years. And I do want to highlight what Skip Leitner is highlighting across the nation right now, and his excellent work as an economist living here in Tucson. He has projected these very memorable and important statistics to consider for how to get to a more sustainable economy and a green economy if we really want that. For Pima County, for example, this is the estimated investment and benefits of a more energy efficient, resource productive US economy. So for mobilized investment, 1.8 billion per year over the period 2022 through 2042. That would be a net job creation, an average of 43,000 net new jobs over a 20-year period, leading to a more resilient economy, sustainable economy of 5.5 billion boost in GDP by the year 2042, which gets us to where we want to go. Clean energy, cleaner air, near zero emissions with a cumulative 7.0 billion savings in avoided air pollution costs and 13.6 billion in avoided climate damages. And this is the economic assessment by Skip and the deeper modeling system of a productivity enhancement of the US infrastructure over the period 2022 through 2042 as of this month that is getting national attention, actually. And he's working with members of Congress on these data sets, these data points, getting their attention. And based on the 2019 share of GDP for Pima County, Arizona, compared to the whole of the United States is what you're looking at. Right here, I will link to his blog so you can go deeper on this. I think we need to get this out there as much as possible. And there's ways to advocate right now. So like I said, a lot of ways. There's the Build Back Better agenda, the executive order that sets an ambitious, for example, new target to make half of all new vehicles sold in 2030 zero emissions vehicles, including battery electric, plug-in hybrid electric, or fuel cell electric vehicles. Also, it kicks off development of long-term fuel efficiency and emission standards to save consumers money, cut pollution, boost public health, advance environmental justice, and tackle the climate crisis. Specifically, the goal is 500,000 EV charging stations by 2030, while promoting strong labor training and installation standards and utilizing the vast tools of federal procurement to electrify the federal fleet, along with labor and affordable housing investments critical for job creation, as well as interstate business and transit. One of the major advocacy areas right now related to the plan is decarbonizing electric power, including reforming, extending, and expanding clean energy tax credits to accelerate clean electricity deployment. This includes extending deadlines through at least 2030, expanding eligibility to standalone storage, and making credits direct pay and refundable, as well as expanding the state energy program. Another important advocacy area related to the plan is electrifying transportation, including providing incentives for vehicle electrification designed to lower barriers to adoption, accelerate stock turnover, and increase equitable access to clean vehicles. This area includes extending existing EV purchase tax credits, public charging infrastructure grants, and extension of alternative fueling tax credit, point of sale rebates, and extra incentives for accessibility and equity. This area also includes existing mass transit services while investing in further expansion and electrification, such as long-term funding for transit programs, with prioritization of low-income and pollution-burdened communities, fortunately. So to sum up, the bipartisan infrastructure package is moving forward as we speak. These measures will generate much-needed jobs, and the current package makes historic first-ever investments to help move Arizona's clean energy economy forward. We really need your help to get the word out about electric school buses, needed to be in that package, as well as EV charging infrastructure like we've talked about, and lead service line replacements, plugging orphan oil and gas wells effectively, and then clean energy and water infrastructure, to name just a few key areas, and everything else I just went over. These investments will generate good, sustainable Arizona jobs and clean up the environment and drive clean energy across the US. And I want to close with, there's a lot going on locally to meet larger national goals with, for example, the 2030 challenge for planning for existing buildings. We're working to do a lot more with that under Local First Arizona and keep moving that effort forward for Tucson to reduce our carbon emissions with buildings by at least 50% in energy, water, and transportation emissions by the year 2030. So working with a lot of partners on that, and you'll hear more about that soon. And we have many programs available to move this forward, all of these efforts forward, one business at a time, and really coalition building is what we're doing. And we need a lot of people involved. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And it's a lot to digest and a lot to say. We need to be in touch with our elected officials to get them on board with all of this. Let me remind people briefly that the recording of this session will be up on our YouTube channel probably by the end of the week. So if you want to refer back to some of Mike's language, to shoot that off to people who are going to be pushing for some really good decision making in Congress, it'll be available. And that's great. So at this point, we can open things up for questions. You can unmute yourself and just ask, and that would probably be the best way to go about dealing with the question answer period.
Mike, I had a question.
Fire away.
Mike, I had a question for you on the scale up of businesses that deal with a renovation of existing housing. Are there a number of businesses starting up to do that, or is it waiting for the federal investment to hit?
The latter, definitely. That's an important consideration. I'm glad you brought that up. I think we'll see more of it based on this waiting period that we're in to see what actually gets invested in. It's definitely needed, though, and I know that's of interest to this group. It's
certainly an equity builder in terms of, people of lower incomes. If they can get access to affordable renovations, that's a major energy and water savings right there.
Right, and I hope it leads to more funding for the city programs that are in existence too, and the county programs. I know that, for example, the county program is supposed to start again in the next few months. I'm thinking that we'll hear more about that soon. Kevin, do you have anything to add about that for the city? Is there anything that you're aware of that's coming up soon with the city programs that have been in existence?
Yeah, only from the non-expert perspective, I would refer folks actually to the recording of tonight's City Council study session. There was a really excellent presentation from Liz Morales, who's the Director of Housing and Community Development. She was detailing the funds that the city has received, excuse me, most recently through the American Rescue Act. And I think, at the risk of misstating, the use of home funds for home retrofits is an allowable expenditure. And we have essentially an unprecedented amount of home dollars that have been allocated towards the city. The city council is in the process of drafting a plan for use of all of these funds. And so remains to be seen exactly how that will all shake out. But some funds have become available. I think, though, I guess I'll just say the scale of the problem is not being met with the dollars that we have, even though these are unprecedented sums to come to the city of Tucson.
Thanks.
Okay. Tanya, you had your hand up. If you want to.
Hi, everybody, by the way. I'm happy to meet some of you guys in person. I've met Mike before, so nice to see you again.
Thanks.
And I was excited to come to this meeting because I've been really focusing on the sustainability with local businesses. And so my question for Mike, because I am doing the Green Leadership Program myself, so I'm fully aware of that hefty little checklist, so I have been going around and I've been having conversations with a lot of local business owners about trying to be more sustainable, being more eco-conscious, making better decisions. And for them, everything comes down to money and they don't care. And so I feel like, as much as I love the Green Leadership Program, I feel like most small business owners are not interested because they don't want to go through a huge checklist and they don't want to pay to make any changes. And they're just looking at their bottom line and trying to stay afloat and making money and feeding their family. So they come at me with a lot of resistance when I'm even trying to talk to them about switching out plastic waste for like biodegradable options. And so my question is, how do we find a way to get on the ground with these local businesses, communicate with them, and make them want to buy in to being more sustainable and make changes? Because I'm not seeing a lot of that in just the little changes I suggest. So like the big Green Leadership Program that I thought I was going to get knocked out, like I'm still working on. So how do we get buy-in from a larger demographic of people to really start seeing change? Because I'm not seeing change fast enough. I'm not seeing people worried about the environment. I'm not seeing people worried about plastic waste. They just are keep looking at their sheets when they buy things, and that's all they care about. So how do we connect better with these people?
It's an excellent question. It's something I think about a lot.
Sorry.
Incentives need to be increased, I think, based on performance is one example. I think there needs to be more investment in incentives. For example, electric vehicles. We're working with the state of Arizona to get a new EV, what we're calling a challenge initiative up and running soon. You'll hear about it soon, to incentivize the installation of charging stations, to bring those costs down to as low as possible. When there's a benefit for a business, I think, to have that charging hub at your business, but it's costly. And so the costs need to be brought down for some of these efforts, especially if you're going to put the time into the planning for it. There's the passionate group that we work with and the early adopters. But then I think what you're getting at is everybody else. And yeah, we definitely need more financial incentives and better loan rates and grants. And there's a lot out there that fortunately we have some access to, but not enough. I think we need a whole lot more.
Well, and to not to play devil's advocate about the EV station, but I have an electric car myself, and I would never use an EV station because I have a station at home that I charge quickly and easily. And if you go to these EV stations, they charge you and they're very slow at charging. Like when I bought my car, the first week, I'm like, I'm going to travel around Tucson and plug in at Bookman's, and I'm going to plug in downtown. It's going to be so fun. The first time I plugged in, I had to stay at Bookman's for like 3 hours, and I had like a 10% charge or something. So it's like,
Good point.
I personally don't feel like investing in a ton of EV stations at local businesses is worth it because people aren't going to use it. We plug in our garage at night when we go to bed and we wake up with a full charge. But I just feel like there's a lot of other issues with sustainability that really need to be addressed with the huge amount of waste and consumption that people are using, and nobody's talking about it. We're just kind of continuing to throw everything away, and that's what's really stressing me out.
I agree that there needs to be better approaches. One of the priorities is faster charging stations, the fastest ones that are more expensive, but you get the fast charge. You get there, you go get a cup of coffee and get your charge. I think that's really important to prioritize, but we also need to prioritize alternative transportation, e-bikes, to more that we can do with electric buses, to anything we can do for car sharing, ride sharing. It's not just about EVs. We need to lower our carbon footprint as much as possible across the board and drive less as well. So there's a lot there to unpack, but I agree. There's major barriers that have to be addressed, and the costs keep coming up again and again and again. And I think there needs to be more incentives out there for the time put in to make the shifts like you're getting at, I think.
How do we get these incentives put in place?
Well, we have to advocate for it. And part of it is this series of bills that I'm talking about, seeing how we can get some of these funds available for the state and then prioritize how they get used with advocacy efforts.
Okay, and what about like just because this is the Sustainable Tucson page, like how do we get out and start connecting with all our small business owners and helping them make better changes? Because I feel like that's where the disconnect is nobody talks about it. Nobody's like connecting. We're all just kind of consuming. So how do we have a bigger voice? How does Local First Arizona have a bigger voice? Like, how do we raise the alarms and like make this a bigger issue? Because I sometimes do these meetings and it's like half the stuff you're saying, to be honest, like I'm not like following, or like I write my letters, I do my phone calls, but it's, you just get a template response back like, thank you so much for reaching out. And then I'm like, what is it really doing? Like, how do we really get like our feet on the ground and start connecting with humans and like voicing our message and like making changes and, you know, making biodegradable containers more affordable so that they buy those instead of plastic. Like that's the kind of stuff that I just feel like is really being missed right now.
Tanya, I'm gonna interrupt here briefly. I think one of the things that I'm going to suggest is that we get you in touch with, for instance, our zero waste committee on that's part of Sustainable Tucson, and have you be a voice for encouraging additional kinds of projects beyond what we're doing to try and connect with some of the businesses to look at things like how to reduce waste. So how about if we're in touch with you about that, and we will go on to some more questions here.
Tanya, could you put if it's okay with you, could you put your email in the chat?
Sure.
Okay.
Tanya, I'll put my email in the chat as well. We are starting an advocacy network, including town halls and cohorts to get developed around advocacy. So I will put I think you have my email, but I'll put it in the chat for anybody.
Great.
Okay. And Shirley, you had your hand up for a while now.
Yeah, well, it's been noted in the press and everywhere that one reason that the low-income jobs aren't coming back is because of the tourism industry just hasn't recovered yet. And now with the new variant of the virus, it may stall. We were hoping for a fast recovery, certainly by the fall, and we don't know if that's going to happen. And another reason for that is that the jobs that are being offered in those industries are not paying very well, and people don't feel that they have to settle for a $10 an hour or a $12 an hour job. And maybe they can find a $15 an hour job someplace else. So that has a lot to do with what the employers are willing to pay to, you know, are they willing to scale up to what the economy is requiring? And I had one other question, and I think it was for Kevin. Someone mentioned something about the businesses not being able to qualify, or they would have to qualify before they can get these benefits, and how difficult is that? And that might be a turnoff for some of them.
Yeah, I think that was for Mike for the green building program, right? But
Yeah.
I'll want to maybe just address the first thing that you mentioned, Shirley. I agree. The last point that I was trying to make in my presentation is that in the long term, the only way out, right, is through public health. People are not going to be comfortable resuming the activities that we all used to take for granted until everyone is vaccinated and the pandemic is actually over. Right?
Well, it's not just being vaccinated. Oh, you mean in terms of the out-of-town people coming?
Well, that's an important aspect to tourism, certainly.
It's the tourism industry that it charges so much of the economy here in Tucson.
Yeah, it does. Absolutely.
And a lot of them don't want to go through what they have to go through to get on an airplane.
I haven't been on a plane yet.
I've got family. I've got family coming here in October, and yeah, it's a lot.
Okay, thanks, Shirley. Barbara?
Yeah, I'd just like to remind everybody that today there was a huge bipartisan infrastructure bill passed in the Senate, and it's going to the House. And we need to contact our representatives and be sure that they're going to vote for this. And this is going to provide the kinds of resources we're looking for in our communities to electrify our transportation system, to bring all kinds of resources to our communities to make these changes for a sustainable future. So get in touch with your congressional reps, make sure they're voting the right way. And let's look forward to that, because there's a lot of incentives coming to make it easier. And I agree with Mike about the fast chargers. I own an electric vehicle. I charge at home because that's for the same reasons that anyone else does when they can't charge up quickly, but that's changing. It's going to change dramatically as these new changes come forward for infrastructure.
Well, it's important to have the chargers at apartment buildings and that kind of thing.
They'll be
Cluster
everywhere.
housing.
Yep, they'll be everywhere.
Yeah, not everybody has a garage where you can charge it conveniently.
Yep.
Thank you, Barbara, for bringing that up. And I was just referring to this advocacy group that we're putting together. And if you're interested, email me to be on that list, because it'll be an action alert that we get out there about everything Barbara's just mentioning and other opportunities as well. So if you want to work with us and other businesses, we are putting that together through town halls, virtual town halls for now, as well as email alerts. So you get all the information you need to make those calls and those emails. So something we're going to be doing a lot now into the fall and beyond. So yeah, email me if you'd like to get on that list.
And you can email me, Paula at sustainabletucson.org, if you're interested in getting on Sustainable Tucson's advocacy list, and or getting our newsletter, which has covered things like our support for the Break Free from Plastic Pollutions Act, which is another effort that hopefully will get passed without too much effort in Congress. But that would be an important step towards doing some of the things that, reducing some of the issues that Tanya was talking about. Barbara, thanks. It's important to remember that we had this big step today, and also to remember that it is, first of all, it's just the Senate, not yet the House, and it'll be an important first step, but there's a long way to go, I think, on all of the things that we need to make life better in the country. Any other questions? Stuart, yeah.
So Mike, you were making reference to a lot of monies that are going to be available, and you were laying out the sort of resilient Arizona 3.0 resilience agenda. Maybe I just wasn't tracking well, but is that money that's going to be available absent this infrastructure bill that was just passed today, or do those figures represent that bill?
Those figures, great point, or great question. Thanks, Stuart. Those are based in this blog that I just linked. And what Skip wanted me to add to that is those are all indicative results. So meaning that the data there for what the 3.0 could look like is all based on how seriously we tackle the problem. And that's how the outcomes will be affected. So if we have all of the investments that we're seeking get funded, then yes, those outcomes are in reach in the next 5 to 10 years. If they're not, we see it underfunded or severely underfunded, we're not going to get close to it. So the time really is right now. It sounds so cliche, but really, this is historic, as Barbara's getting at. What's happening in the next few months really does shape where we go with how much funding is available, how much incentives are available in the near term and long term.
So are you saying that what Skip has put out is this great plan, and what got passed today, and hopefully will next day or two and has get passed, is the actual funding that could be applied that way?
Exactly.
Okay, so it sounds like your first town hall might be on this topic. Is that true?
I think so. Yeah, we want to have a town hall in the fall on the infrastructure investments. So that'll be coming up soon. If you email me, you'll be sure to get those updates to be invited.
Yeah, it seems like a very important topic because a lot of us have friends in government, whether it's city council, county supervisor, state senator, and so on. And others may not have heard of us yet, but want to hear from people like Tanya and Mike and Barbara. So this sounds like a really key time.
They do want to hear from you. And I think it does get their attention more. If you're speaking on behalf of a business, it does work. I've been in enough of these meetings to know that they pay attention when you're there. And if we can get you to join on behalf of a business or organization, it really helps the message. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Okay, Stephen?
Stephen, can you unmute?
Yeah, sorry, I tried to. I put it into the chat, but the person who really needs to be convinced in Arizona on this infrastructure is Senator Sinema. So phone her and relentlessly.
Agreed. And I think it'll help. The more you do it, there aren't as many people doing that as you might think. So it really does help.
But Senator Sinema did vote for it. It's out of the Senate now. So that's good news.
She
So
voted
thank-
for that one, but not for, she has said she has opposition to the next one, which is really where the climate change effect would be felt.
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's the reconciliation one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the big one.
It is. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay. So actually, I've got a question for Kevin, who I think is still with us.
Sure.
You mentioned 20 to 30,000 jobs that have not returned yet. What are the prospects? Are we seeing an upward tick in both jobs and jobs getting filled, or do we seem to be flattening out a bit?
Yeah, it's worse than that. So if you asked me 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would have said, yeah, prospects are great, right? Vaccination rate in Pima County exceeded 70%. Expenditure, I was from the city side, we track sales tax revenue. It's been through the roof. We've said, oh my gosh, the pandemic's actually ending. And obviously, as I think everyone is painfully aware, that's currently not the case. So employers are, recalibrating. They're making different decisions about whether to send folks back to the office. Business travel and tourism, is not happening like we thought it was going to, or like we would have predicted it was going to a couple of weeks ago. So I don't think that any of that's good news. And it really just underscores the point that, the cause of this economic turmoil is a health crisis. And until that health crisis is resolved, we're not going to have a complete recovery, right? We're going to continue along this K-shaped recovery pattern that we've been experiencing for the past 18 months, where a majority is still comfortable, able to work from home, has spending cash, and has shifted the balance of that spending online. And there will not be money circulating in the economy and the service industries, which basically means that there won't be jobs, right, for that lower income or lower earning tier of the community. I don't know that there's really anything else to say about it other than that. It's not good news.
No, just that's kind of discouraging. Okay, any other issues to bring up with these guys? We've got some really great resources here.
This is great. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to speak today. And I did put a link to the city's website, connecttucson.com, into the chat. Please do check it out. And if you have businesses that you're talking to or working with, if they have questions, that's the best place for them to start. The easiest thing for them to do on that website is to find our email addresses or to go into the box where they can send us a question and request our assistance. So please do share that resource with everyone that you work with in the community. And of course, if you guys have any follow-up questions or think of anything, you can always reach out to me directly.
Great.
Thank you, Kevin.
Really
Very much.
good presentations. Yeah.
Thank you. And I included the link to our environmental action page with all the programs for more information. And again, email me if you'd like to be part of that advocacy group that we're forming, the Action Alert group. Thanks.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Actually,
Thanks, Kevin.
okay, I know, Kevin, you said you had to go, so we thank you very much for great information. And Mike, I'm gonna maybe toss the same question to you. If you see, as you work with Local First and with local and state businesses, if you see expansion at all in happening, or at least people looking to develop new businesses or bring back old ones that may have fallen by the wayside during the pandemic. You see any prospects for hope there?
Some, I think we have to get through this pandemic as fast as we can. And I agree with Kevin's assessment that we're not through it yet, and those challenges loom large. So I think that we have strong support amongst the network, that I see a lot of people working together and hanging on, and it's really inspiring to see. And we are there to support in many ways through our consultation services that we've provided since day one for getting access to loans and grants. And we do everything we can on our side, but it really is hard times, and not going to understate that. It really is. You heard the data today, and there's a long road we're on here. So please spend locally. I will say it really matters more than ever. It's something we've heard for a long time. We have to local businesses with all the competition out there anyway, with Amazon and the big corporations, but this truly is a make or break time. And so please spend your dollars locally, go to those local restaurants, connect with local services anytime that you can, and really think about where that dollar goes when you go to Amazon. It is really affecting the local businesses in dramatically difficult, challenging ways.
That's a really important point to make. So yeah, thank you for that. Any final comments or questions? Stuart.
Mike, I know you did this a few weeks ago, but I would love to hear from you again, the logic about spending money at a local store versus Amazon, because after all, Amazon's got a fulfillment center in the area. So there's local people working there. So walk us through again. I don't shop Amazon because they're trying to take over the world. I don't believe in supporting that. But what can we tell our friends more precisely?
Your dollars are going to go further in how they affect other services. There's secondary and tertiary jobs that get supported that way, because local businesses are part of a network that work with other printers, and they work with other services in the economy, that we are seeing a ripple effect when we support local businesses. Ideally, that's the spirit of the network that we have. So the studies have shown that. You can go to our website to read more about the impact of your dollar, how much further it goes when you spend local, and it retains here. It's retained here. And that's what we're aiming for here, is that we're not seeing money go out of our economy, that is actually staying within our local communities. So that's a big factor. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you for bringing that up.
Stuart, what Mike's referring to is the multiplier effect. When money circulates through a local economy, it gets actually multiplied in terms of its impact.
Great, yeah, that's so important. Mike mentioned the secondary businesses, the local company that uses local accountants and designers and computer service people and all of that. So the ripple effect that goes out is really important. That's that multiplier effect that Stephen just mentioned. Okay, anything else? And since some people have joined us since we first started, if anyone has any announcements of anything upcoming that you want to share? Yes, sure.
Paula may have mentioned this at the outset. We have a training program through Sustainable Tucson called Ambassadors of Sustainability. And we're very happy to have people like Mike Beal and professors from UA and other activists, Sandy Barr from the Sierra Club, who come, and each Saturday morning we get a different presentation on a different topic. And we'll be starting this Saturday, amazingly. There's still time to sign up. It's a bit of a commitment in those 14 weeks. It's 2.5 hours on Saturday morning, maybe an hour of reading during the week. But if you've got half an interest, feel free to reach out, go to our website, which I think we just updated this afternoon on that, or write to me, Stuart at Sustainable Tucson. And we do talk about how to scale up our ability to reach and persuade. So right in line with what Mike is talking about and Tanya was asking, how do we change attitudes? How do we change behavior? We don't have all the answers, but we've got some good questions and we've got some good leads on things that do make a difference. So if you're thinking about it, I'd love to see you.
Great, thank you.
Just want to add that I think it's a great thing you're doing with that cohort approach. We found cohorts lead to more collaboration, connectivity, like what Tanya's getting to. And Scale Up has had some powerful collaborations come out of it because it's cohort based. And when you can have teams working together on a regular basis, it does go a lot further in my experience. So I'm glad you're doing that at the individual level. I think we need to see a lot more cohort building approaches for more coalition building and collaborations. So thanks for that.
I have a couple of really brief things. One is tomorrow morning, there's going to be a press conference. Because some of us are going to be participating on expanding electric vehicles and the electrification of our transportation system for Arizona. This is happening, I'm sure, all over the country, but I'm not sure how that's going to be broadcast. Mike, do you?
I don't. I think they're inviting press to it. So
Yeah.
see.
Hopefully they'll show up. Yeah. And the other thing is, think about gifting. My family, some of my kids have shared gifts with me for local restaurants, so I wouldn't have gone out to a restaurant otherwise. So think about gifting for special occasions for your family members and your friends, because there are these ways that you can give them a gift certificate for a meal at some of the nicest restaurants in town, and many of them.
And we do have a lot of really great restaurants in town, local restaurants, family owned, some of which have been here for years and some of which are quite new, but definitely, Mike said, generally spend your money locally. I would say eat locally too. It's really a lot of delicious food here.
Oh yeah, that's included for sure. And they're needing it more.
Yeah, definitely.
Restaurants. There's also a Shop Arizona Marketplace that we launched recently. If you're looking for local goods and gifts, I'm going to put the link in. Really excited about that. So you could take a look at that for statewide local gifts. And there's a lot there.
And if you guys are on Facebook, there's a Tucson Keep Local Alive Facebook page that has almost 15,000 members. I actually was one of the people that helped start it, so it's pretty exciting. But it only focuses on local businesses, and not just local businesses, but small businesses, not franchises, the ones that were hit hardest during the pandemic. And that's all it is. It's every type of business we have here in Tucson, and it's a great forum for everybody to communicate and boost each other up and give each other business.
What's the name of that Facebook page again?
It's called Tucson. I can put it in the chat too, but it's called Tucson Keep Local Alive.
Okay.
And you got to type it Tucson first, Keep Local Alive, or you won't find it.
Okay.
Really. But it's great. And you can search it if you need a handyman or anything that literally, I've seen every single profession posted on that page.
Oh, good.
I actually found it putting that first Tucson last on my Firefox search.
So it's wrong. So the way that they have to do it is they started the Keep Local Alive Tucson, and then they started the group based off of that page and named it Tucson Keep Local Alive.
Oh, okay.
So the Keep Local Alive, let me double check now. I don't want to give you the wrong one, but I think it goes, it goes the other way. So I think it's Tucson Keep Local Alive is the right one. So yeah, Tucson Keep Local Alive is the one that has 14.5K members. The other one is just a small page that they started in order to get the group off of there. So always do Tucson first.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I actually came up with the same list of sites when I did it your way.
You did what?
Came up with the same list of sites.
Oh, okay. Well, it's
Okay, anyway, don't worry about it. I'll find it.
okay. It's the one that has 14.5 thousand members. And it
Okay.
has a green background.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I think we're probably done for the evening. Thank you all, and thanks in particular to Mike and Kevin for a lot of really powerful information and a lot to think about as we try to, as much as possible, to support our local economy by getting healthy and staying healthy.